Hello, I'm Tom Bailey, and I'm joined today by David Shriner-Cahn, who is a thriving entrepreneur, podcaster, and speaker, and the host of Smashing the Plateau. So, David, hello, and a very warm welcome to today's episode.
Thank you so much, Tom. It's great to be here
Thanks for coming in. And whereabouts are you in the world right now?
in New York City.
Great, amazing. And let's quickly get onto the subject of David before I jump into the interview. So, since losing his job in 2006 after devoting 28 years as a highly skilled employee, David decided in that moment to work for himself and have more control over his destiny. He's now guiding high achieving professionals who yearn to have the impact in the world with their knowledge and creativity by becoming successful coaches and consultants. So, the title for today's episode is Do What You Love and Get Paid What You're Worth. And David is going to show us how to do that in just under 7 minutes. So, David, your first question is who are your ideal clients?
Well, you already said it, Tom. High achieving individuals who are building a consulting or coaching business following a long career as an employed professional.
Okay, so very similar to your background then.
Yeah, no surprise there.
No, not at all. Great. And at least you can resonate with that audience and you know what they've been through and are currently going through as well. So, what is the biggest challenge that they currently face in their current situation before you work with them?
Um, it, Many people start to focus on strategy and tactics to try to build what it is they believe they want. That's actually not the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is trauma, and it's
Yeah.
trauma due to job loss. Whenever you have a loss, it is a traumatic event. And it's true whether you have left your job voluntarily or you've been forced out, there's still trauma because your sense of identity, especially as a high achieving professional, your sense of identity is very tied up to in what you do as your job.
Yeah.
So when that is gone, all of a sudden you're like you don't know what to call yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. Understood. And with this sense of trauma, lack of identity, what impact does that typically have on them or their careers or business?
Well, one impact is they don't always make the best decisions early on. The
Hmm.
the other um, emotional component that's tied to the trauma and the shattered identity is fear and loneliness.
Yeah.
So there is great fear. They're doing something that has a lot of elements that they've never done before, and so there's a lot of fear that's involved. And the loneliness is I- two things. One is when you're a business owner or a CEO, you're the only person in that role, whether it's
Hmm.
a one person company or a company with many people. Um, and there are things that you are reluctant to share with anybody else, or maybe you don't have anybody to share them with. So just because of your role, there's loneliness. The second piece is when you are working in a job, you have a built-in social
Yeah.
structure and a technical support structure. And all of a sudden that is gone overnight. So you don't have people to sort of hang out with and talk about what is on your mind kind of naturally. So that's a big issue. And the second is you're missing the technical support. All of a sudden, as a new
Yeah.
business owner, you're responsible for everything, and that is not it's not what happens when you're part of an organization. There are different people responsible for different roles, and so there's a lot of loneliness that happens right
Hmm.
off the bat.
Of course. And I guess when you do lose your job, there's a little bit of fear around income. How will I pay for my mortgage, my bills? And do you think that sometimes leads to the wrong decisions being made?
Very often, and as a matter of fact, even if you have enough money to pay your bills, um, again, high achieving people are used to working, and there's a lot of emotional baggage tied up in
Yeah.
that. I have a good friend who has enough money that they don't have to work again. But this is somebody who has been working their entire life, and the whole idea of just not working is really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Understood. So let's think about somebody in this situation. They've lost their job, lost their identity. What is one valuable piece of advice that you would give to somebody to really help them solve that problem and move past it?
The most important thing is actually to take time to reflect.
Hmm.
And you can do this in a couple different ways. One is if you can financially afford to do it, you are better off taking what I like to call a sabbatical period. So you can both recharge and also reflect on what's most important to you. And that reflection is really important. And you can't, it's really hard to reflect when you're working hard on something that takes a lot of energy, a lot of time. So the
Yep.
reflection time is important. Second is because I mentioned the loneliness and the your social structure has suddenly been shattered as well.
Hmm.
You need to build two elements of relationships. One is your new peer community, people that are going to be in the world that will be part of the kind of work you're going to be doing. So if you're a
Yep.
consultant or coach, you want to be around people that are consultants and coaches. And the
Hmm.
second is you need to build a mentor community. So you will need some guidance, and the kind of guidance you need will change over time. But you need to find those people who can give you expert advice when you need it, so you don't waste a lot of time and waste a lot of money.
Great. Thank you very much for that. And what is one valuable free resource or some content that you could share to really help people move past this?
Well, as you know, I'm a podcast host as well.
Yep.
I've been podcasting since 2014. So we have hundreds of episodes at
Fantastic.
smashingtheplateau.com. Many of the guests are consultants and coaches.
Great.
Others work with the consultants and coaches. There's lots of information. It's all free.
Excellent. And you talked about that social circle and surrounding yourself by coaches and consultants. What a great way to do that initially, by going to smashingtheplateau.com. And what I'll do is I'll post a link to that below this episode.
Great. Thank you, Tom.
No problem. And so this is slightly off topic, I guess. And that is then my next question, which is what would you say is your greatest failure that you've ever made personally, either in life or in business? And what did you learn from it?
Well, on the surface, my job losses, there were two that were actually pretty significant. The one you mentioned in the intro in
Hmm.
2006 that led me into consulting. There was another one earlier in my career when I was an engineer that led me to go work in the not-for-profit sector
Yep.
for a couple of decades. And in both cases, they were very traumatic at the time. On the surface, they look like major failures, even though neither one was related to my own personal
Hmm.
performance. They were still very traumatic. Um, However, what they did trigger was a tremendous amount of reflection, introspection, personal growth, and professional growth. And I ended up trying new things that I never would have tried without if the job loss hadn't happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. So it almost creates an opportunity through on the back of the trauma.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And the final question from me today is what is one question that I should have asked you that will also add some great value for this audience today?
Well, the one question that I think is really important when you're going through a transition from employment to entrepreneurship is you really need to get clear on what you want to achieve and why. And there are four steps that I would say um, are key. The first one is something that people don't necessarily think about, which is you need to plan your exit strategy first.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know where you want to end up, it's going to be very hard to plan how to get there. So before you start anything in a new business, decide on what your exit strategy is. And that strategy can change over time, but before you get started, just know where you want to end up. And then the other three are create a vision for your life that you can articulate and write them down in terms of goals and objectives. Goals being something that's specific enough so you know when you're working towards them, but not measurable, so that there's always more that you can do to work towards your goals, and then break that down into measurable objectives that you can achieve over time.
Great. Excellent. Well, David, thank you so much for your time again today. There's a ton of great value here, which I cannot wait to share with our audience.
Thanks so much, Tom.